Hi, my name is Jen Craig Evans, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Consent on the Map project. And with that comes the consent cards. So I'm going to give one to each of you just so you can take a look at them while I'm talking to you about them. There's one there. It's a double-sided image, as you'll see. Small card, about 4 by 4. So just to give you a little bit of history about how this project came to be, and then I'll get into what it is. First question that I would like to just offer is, have you ever been in a class where you've received a physical adjustment before? Yeah, probably so. And in that class, did the teacher give you an opportunity to indicate whether or not you would like to receive said adjustment? Some classes, some not. Okay. So, and that's not uncommon, right? So it's not standardized per se whether or not the teacher will ask permission, and some teachers simply don't offer physical adjustments, and some do. And sometimes it's expected, and sometimes it's not. So the idea was born with these content cards when I came to the first yoga conference of my own as a participant last year, and I had just completed um, as I'm a yoga teacher, and I had just completed a program at Langara College in Vancouver called Therapeutic Yoga for Trauma, Resilience, and Emotional Well-Being. And there was a big emphasis in this program around trauma-informed yoga and the approach that that gave, and specifically a lot of emphasis on choice and empowering students to make their own choice, and certainly to consent whether or not to be touched. In fact, we don't offer physical adjustments at all in a clinical setting, but it really ignited this spark within me to engage more empathetically with others and really understand what their needs are. And I certainly became more aware of the impact of physical adjustments for people. And this doesn't have to be somebody who's experienced trauma per se, but let's say you've had a physical injury in your life and you just don't want to be touched by that instructor because maybe you're not certain about their anatomical understanding or background or the way that they can help you, and maybe you haven't had an opportunity to express that you have this injury and what you need. Perhaps it's a larger class setting, or you didn't have a chance to meet the teacher ahead of time. So last year, when I came to my first conference, I went to a class that was with a very well-known teacher, and a wonderful teacher at that. And during this class, at the very beginning, there was an announcement made that there was an assistant that was to be there to walk around and offer hands-on physical adjustments. And having come just freshly out of this course, I thought, okay. And I was waiting for the cue or the question, is there anybody who would prefer not to receive these adjustments? And it didn't come. And we went straight into the class, and I was now, we'll say, hyper aware of the fact, because of my recent training, that there was this woman walking around offering these adjustments. And not only was I aware that, hey, there's probably a lot of people in the room right now who don't want it, or maybe they do, but there hasn't been an opportunity to indicate one way or another. I also was, on this particular day, not wishing to receive them myself for no reason other than I just didn't want to. I didn't know the person, and I felt okay within my own practice that day. So this is something that really resonated with me, and throughout the class, I really wasn't able to just be in my body and in the practice because I was constantly in my head thinking about when is the time going to come that she's going to be here and her hands are going to be on me. And in fact, it did happen. More than once, she came up, and not only did she come up, she didn't offer or ask at that moment, but she also sort of came up from behind, from the side, and all of a sudden the hands were on me. And so I don't blame this particular teacher, and I wasn't angry, and in the moment I didn't say anything. I had the practice. But after the fact, I really felt that I needed to go and let her know that it was something that was not welcome from me. And so I approached this teacher after the fact, and I said, I just want you to know that thank you, first of all, for what you're here and what you're offering. I really appreciate it. But I do want you to know that on this particular day, I just really didn't want to be touched. I would have preferred to have had my own space. And she was incredibly apologetic, and I'll even say horrified. She was apologizing over and over again. And I said, I'm not angry with you. I just wanted to say something so that you know. And she said, you know, honestly, it's something I've never really thought about. I was trained to give adjustments. It's just something that I do. And I said, and that's fine. So she said, tell me, how would you approach this? And so I let her know why this was in my mind. The training I had recently just finished and completed. And so she said, so tell me what you would do to request or get this consent. And I said, she said, would you just ask people outright at the beginning of class, in the moment? And I said, well, from my experience, sometimes even when asked in a large group setting where eyes are open Or even, let's say, often a common one is in downward dog, the teacher will say, okay, raise a leg if you don't want to receive any physical adjustments. And I said, in my opinion, in that setting, somebody who doesn't want to be may feel singled out. And they may not feel that it's an option, or it may not feel safe to actually stand up and say, hey, no, I don't want them, thanks, because people are looking at you, and maybe you're looking around and you don't feel comfortable opting out yourself. And so I said, personally, I would ask in a position like child's pose at the beginning of class when the heads are down, so that nobody feels like they're going to be singled out. They have that opportunity to still be, we'll say, anonymous in their request, but the teacher still can clearly see. So beginning of class in child's pose, would you like to receive physical adjustments today? I will be offering them. Please raise a hand from this position if you choose not to. And so she said, okay, thank you very much. And when we went our separate ways. So, and this story then, as I have begun to build my teaching career in Victoria, is something I have shared a lot of times. It's clearly something I'm passionate about. And so I've gotten to know Carolyn quite well in the community. And at the Belly Fit Summit, I was asked to teach this year. And I said, so I was co-teaching with a couple of very talented local teachers, and I said, so are we going to be offering adjustments? And if so, I just want to make sure that we're going to be asking. So certainly I wanted to practice what I was preaching when I was talking about this. And they said, yeah, we'll for sure ask ahead of time. And then this got me to thinking, and to ask Carolyn directly one day, hey, so what are we going to do about this issue of consent at the conference this year? And I had shared this story with her as well. And all the while I had been trying to get a meeting together with some other, we'll say, local yoga professionals who are really aware of this idea of trauma-informed yoga approach and consent and empowering people through this idea of choice. And oh my goodness, we discovered it was late November of this past year. I sat down with myself, Danielle Pope, who is a local writer, very talented, and Sarah Holmes de Castro, who is a leader with Yoga Outreach and does a lot with the Transition House here in town, and Carolyn, and another teacher, Lori Piazza, actually, who just was really keen and interested about the topic. And we sat down for breakfast at Nourish, and Carolyn said, okay, so why are we here? And she said, what is your vision for this, Jen? Like, what do you want in terms of an action item? And I said, I just am really passionate about empowering people to have choice. And first and foremost, have that opportunity to make the choice and feel good about making that choice, not to feel like it's a bad thing if you don't want to receive these physical adjustments. And Carolyn said, why don't we just create our own? And so, okay, exactly, why don't we create our own? So, introducing the consent card. One side says, yes, please, I welcome adjustments. And then the other side says, no adjustments. But you'll notice that it says, I'm taking care of myself. And so we really wanted to emphasize that no isn't a bad thing, and rather it's an empowering choice. So no, not just no thank you, but no, I'm taking care of myself today, thank you very much. And so the idea is that this card is to be placed at the front of the mat with whatever side up you would like for the teacher to know is your preference. And going from there, it just rests. So any teacher who has always offered physical adjustments, and it's just part of what they do, doesn't need to change anything that they're offering. In fact, even if they're not the teacher who per se even asks every time, they still don't need to change anything that they're doing. All they have to do is look down when they approach the student and honor the choice that's being made at the front of the mat. So we wanted to make it really easy for teachers to adapt to, so that nobody had to change anything too much. And the other wonderful thing about it is, let's say halfway through the class, the student changes their mind. Maybe in the beginning, they decided, yes, I would like adjustments, and then they decide halfway through that they're not resonating with the teacher and maybe they wouldn't like them, or for any other number of reasons. Maybe they just changed their mind, you know? So it's wonderful in that way too, that the mind can be changed and the indication is clearly there at all times. So that's the idea behind it. Not just the consent card, but the Consent on the Mat campaign is aimed at really getting these beyond here into studios in Victoria, into all of BC, and that this campaign becomes more awareness around this approach to really honoring and valuing a student's choice. So that's what we see going forward, and more to come on that. We have been featured already in the Globe and Mail across Canada. So a friend of mine picked it up in Ontario the other day and sent me a picture of it, which is really exciting. CBC also did an interview with Carolyn just the other day and a little write-up also. So that's just the beginning, but I feel like it's a pretty big deal and we're pretty excited about it. And I guess from here, we just hope to see it really take off. I'll just finish with a quote that Carolyn said in the article, and that was, "By this time next year, I don't want it to be a thing in people's bags that they're wondering what it is, but rather a thing that they place in their yoga mat bag and just comes with them as another prop or expected item that's just part of the class." So that is our hope and our goal. So there are 20 cards in the bag, and part of the proceeds are actually going to yoga outreach. It's probably helpful for the teachers really to get on board with it, to purchase them and to use them, because then they become commonplace in the studios, right? So if the teacher has a package of them, they can hand them out, and especially those teachers who are really on board with helping this grow, then that's a wonderful thing for them to take that ownership and to hand them out. And then the students who wish can absolutely buy their own and just have it in their package. And then, so we would like, and the goal is hopefully ultimately, as I said, Carolyn's vision is that it's just in their yoga mat bag. But I think in the beginning, it's going to take the community really embracing the concept and using them. So they're, maybe they're even at the front desk of the yoga studio. The karma person or the karmi at the front who's welcoming people can speak to them, and they're being offered when you sign in. Here's your consent card. And maybe it won't be embraced by everybody, but I really can't see why not. It's very simple. It's not invasive, and it just allows you to express your choice. So our hope is that they're used in every class, no questions asked. And again, it's not that physical adjustments are bad or that they can't be offered, but the respect to honor the choice is there. The other thing that we've created online, and we're going to have, I think, a paper copy here shortly, is a pledge. So for teachers or for students to sign, that's very basic. Just that you pledge to become more aware, that you pledge to honor choice, and there's an option that if you'd like to learn more, that we'll send information about upcoming trainings and things like that with, not yoga conference branded, but anybody that's offering something along this line that would be helpful to better understand this idea of, let's say, trauma-informed yoga and what that looks like. So there's an opportunity for people to just really get involved with the movement. Yeah. So the one last thing I just wanted to mention around the community-wide campaign, Consent on the Mat, going forward, is that our hope not only for them to be used community-wide, at least to begin in studios, but we also have been discussing this idea around how can we indicate classes, for example, that just purely don't offer any physical adjustments. For example, when I teach, it's just something I don't do unless I know the students really, really well. I've established a long-term relationship with them. And then even then, I still ask permission each and every time. This, of course, would indicate that. But the other thing we thought that would be a really nice thing to have is, let's say, like a business commerce sticker that sits in the front window of a business, that there's a little decal with our image on it that indicates that this studio honors and uses this system. And so that the students who are coming in know ahead of time. We hope to send out the graphics for studios to put on their website also, again, if they're opting in to really use the system. And then maybe even have an indication somewhere on the studio schedule, if they're not per se opting in as a studio as a whole, but maybe on the studio schedule, little indicators that this teacher during this class, with be it a graphic or something, is using the system. And maybe even it goes as far as this teacher, this class, no touch, so that people who just don't want to even have to deal with this can have that opportunity. And in fact, Sarah Holmes de Castro, and she can speak to this better, had mentioned this as an idea, because when she teaches in a therapeutic setting where they simply do not offer touch ever, she felt like this would be a really nice bridge to come out of, let's say, a transition house specific trauma-informed class. How do you now bridge the gap into coming into a studio setting? That can be a really big leap for a lot of people to come from a trauma-informed practice where the teacher is really aware of these things, and then into a studio class where it's uncertain about what to expect. So we thought that by indicating this some way on the schedule, what's being offered, that it gives students an opportunity to seek out in the community where they know it's, we'll say, safe, and that they know that they don't have to be concerned or worried about that. So that was just the last little piece I wanted to add.
Natalie Rousseau, and I teach yoga. And this is my 4th year presenting at the Victoria Conference. And I was so excited this year that in our bag we got these beautiful consent cards that were made for the presenters for us to use at the conference and to purchase and use in our classes. And what they do is they allow us to know, just at a glance, if the students in our class want to receive adjustments on this day, and they can make that choice by just flipping the card either way. And I love this as a teacher because then I don't have to guess, nor do I have to try and remember, because as you can imagine at a conference, if there's a lot of people, even if I do ask, I might not remember who has chosen not to receive adjustments that day. And also sometimes it's hard for people to make that choice, and this just makes it so much easier, and you can even change your mind halfway through the class. And so I think it's just a really great idea, and they should be at every single conference, and I will be bringing them to all my workshops from now on.